motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so then for the bulk of the meeting is going to do a debrief of how we felt the first year went. I think it was highly successful. So I've gotten some feedback I shared with you all from some of the applicants, and I think while some weren't excited about the outcome, I don't think anyone had real concern with how we handled the process. But some did request some feedback specifically, and I emailed those to you guys as well. So I guess I'll just open it up to you guys, how you guys felt it went, and any changes you want to make for next year.
Yeah, and Molly really started the conversation about this subjectivity. I mean, I did struggle with some, that grading process, so if we could do something, anything to help that next year would be greatly appreciated. And I don't really necessarily have any suggestions, so.
Right.
One suggestion towards that idea I felt was to somehow on the application to be more thorough with telling them the project will be evaluated on quality, demonstrate community benefits, and then explain, like, write your benefit tell us your benefit to community, or tell us show us how you're going to demonstrate community need, because I think some of them miss that.
Right.
Or, rather than like a full-out statement, even if you had to create it. So, for instance, if I was a flute performance, I would have to say, I think we would attract 100 people to the flute concert, or something like that. Like to have that part of the application process to be, please answer these questions. I think we might have, but just a little clearer to
Right,
them.
and I think
and that would help us, I think. But I don't know.
I think so too. We did kind of do that, but the guidelines and the application were two separate documents, and
Yeah.
they might have not looked when they were doing one. So we can add more into the actual one page or.
I just wrote down a few things. We had the meeting with all the applicants, or it was available, we had that open house. And I unfortunately was away, but I think that was a great thing to do, and I would encourage us to do that next year, and perhaps even expand that. And maybe you already did, if applicants, like if they were going through it and they said, hey, we have questions, can we come in and meet with you? Did they do that?
Some people called. I got several phone calls on little things. But I think maybe having that open house closer to the meeting date when they're actually working on it. Because this year it was like way in advance and people weren't really thinking about it yet. So if that was actually closer to the actual due date, I bet we'd get a lot of people with more specific questions.
Yeah, definitely. Like the day before.
Yeah, I was thinking really close.
Yeah.
Maybe not quite, but yeah. Hi.
So I had that.
Just so I can catch Neil up. So we're just kind of debriefing what we thought could go better for next year.
Yeah, I know that whole ranking is tough, and I've done those, many of those kinds of forms and rankings. And I don't know if there's a better alternative. We need to rank the projects. We have a fiduciary responsibility, so how do we pick them if somebody questioned? But I still wonder, is that really the best way? And maybe there are some other communities have tried stuff, and I would like to know what some others have done that might be a little bit different than a standard numerical ranking. I don't know. So that was just one idea. The other thing, this is for next year, but I'd like to see us write a letter to the council telling them our experience, and maybe we just draft it saying the committee would like to see additional resources added to this program for 2024 or whatever the next, because we saw that there was a real demand, and there was others who would have submitted but just weren't familiar with it and just didn't feel comfortable. So that 235 or whatever could have easily been more. So I'd like to see us, because we're the ones who are going to push for our increase in the RAP tax. So I would encourage us to do that. And if you don't feel comfortable writing that kind of letter, I would suggest we do it, but
Yeah, I
that's
think that
just
would
me.
be a great format, like anything we want to pass on. And also, I wouldn't necessarily wait until next year, because we're doing the budgeting now.
Oh.
So it wouldn't be a last-minute decision before. I think it would be something that you could, and I think a letter with several feedback and recommendation to them would be great.
Is that the kind of thing we should do individually or as a committee?
I think as a committee.
As a committee?
Well, on that note, Richard, I hear you, because within that scope of what you're saying, I felt some specific applications could fall into just a bigger budget of like the sports department. For instance, the fast pitch even.
Well, it's
So
not
that's
just funding, but
confusing.
it's staffing as well, and expertise, so.
So
yeah,
we
but,
need-
I mean, you guys can make any recommendation that you want, but.
And then I just feel as a devil's advocate to that, I have a feeling some of the city might wonder within that evaluation of more money is, why should the city support a well-operating event like the Moab Music Festival? So we have to evaluate that too in our, like, at what point, how much is
Yeah.
the RAP tax going to a well-established fundraising group?
Yeah.
That
and-
was an
and-
interesting comment I got from some public, and I was like, because it shows community support?
Right.
I don't know. That's a tough one.
Diversification for, I don't know, the nonprofits that are involved.
Yeah,
It's always nice to have income coming from several places.
yeah. So that's part of that defining, I think, our project evaluation categories. And kind of fell into your thing from the minutes of the one-time cost
Yeah.
projects versus the long time. We kind of stalled out on that idea.
And Mary McGann, when, in their application process, that was like one of the questions, or it was spelled out on the application. Is this a one-time project, or is this an ongoing funding? Which was the same issue that you guys had brought up, in helping us to differentiate.
I think we could probably review the form as well. Did we feel like we had the information we needed? And based on some of the questions and discussion, there was some fine tuning, I think, that we,
Yes, as far as the actual physical form, like some of the formatting of that, it was definitely off, but we can fix that.
so we learned, yeah.
Yeah.
And then,
Because the concept, because this, like I've said before, this is the first committee I've sat on where we've actually, awarded grants. So the concept was new to me, the one-time event versus the ongoing. So I learned something.
To wrap back around to the letter to the council, I would be happy to draft something up.
oh, okay.
Or are we comfortable with that, and what would we want to include? Just to,
I don't know if we have to wordsmith it right here.
No, but the topic areas would be good.
Topic areas,
Yeah.
Increase, well, I don't want to jump in right away, saying we might need a little bit more money. I don't know, I'm just trying to think.
You could word something like, the RAP tax committee feels a higher percent of the annual RAP tax could be given to the committee applicants. just that, like, there's more need than we had money for, or it could be that simple, right? Because it was randomly a % before even applications were seen, so a feedback letter could simply be, we think that should be increased.
I would start off by thanking the council, the mayor for appointing us and to a challenging position, this wonderful new program, yada, yada, yada. And it was a difficult, interesting process, and we heard from many groups throughout the city, and we're encouraged by the council's support for its recommendations. Moving ahead in 2024, we would like to see the council consider an expansion of the existing program. We could also address the issue. No, we'll just do that. And that's all. I'm just yakking here.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it brief, just
Does
like,
that sound okay,
Yeah.
something what I'm saying?
yeah, I'll have a thank you. It was an interesting process, lots of good applications. You know, let it be known that we believe that we could easily.
Yeah, you might want to go for a very specific ask. Like this year it was an 80-20% split, so maybe go for very specific.
I'd
30,
say
70.
perfect. Perfect. Because I think the 80-20, that just came out of,
Just a
the
random.
council was
Yeah.
sitting here debating, and I think 75-25 was originally discussed, or 70-30, and then one of the council members said, no, I think we should do 80-20. And that's kind of how it went. Now, I know they have lots of needs, but maybe we can push them to get a little bit more for this.
Yes,
I-
they might not know that we think that, so it's just good to let
Yeah,
them know.
yeah, absolutely.
I think it would be worth noting that, I mean, I would anticipate a higher demand next year as well. And so that's a fairly good reason for considering increasing the pot.
So Annie, when is the master plan going to be completed?
Well, it should be, our goal is to have it actually adopted by the end of the calendar year. But as far as like the data and the recommendations will be done towards the end of the summer. So other than like maybe some fine tuning and some feedback from the community, we'll kind of know. The survey closed on Sunday night. And so we'll have some preliminary data, but I don't know if any of you guys made it to the open house.
No, I did the form, though. I filled out the.
Yeah, so we had some preliminary data from the open house that I thought was just fascinating. Like the number one reason people go to our parks, community events, like by a landslide. So like, and it also kind of gets at some of the things that we're missing in the parks, and a lot of that is programming and adult classes and things that the city doesn't do. So I kind of think we could dovetail some of that data into like what would make a compellable project for next year.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah,
That's
like
kinda
more
cool.
partners that can offer programming in the parks.
Yeah. And do things that the city isn't doing or can't currently do. That's kinda
So
cool.
is the county on a calendar year?
The county's on a calendar year, but the city's on
city,
the
sorry,
city
yeah.
goes, our fiscal year will start July 1st.
Okay.
So we're in the budget process for next year already.
So question for you, what you just said, community events. On Saturday was the car show, which was well-attended. It was a lot of fun. Could the Rotary have come to us and said, hey, we're doing the car show next year, we need support? Like,
If they're a C3,
yeah, I don't know what that, probably.
Probably a
know if they-
C4.
C4 maybe.
Yeah, and it's
whatever
also
that
a
is.
little bit, I mean, no, it's technically
But I was just
recreation, but it's a little bit a step away from recreation and parks and arts. It's a little bit, I mean, I guess depending on how much you love cars.
And the Rotaries
Just
always
wondering.
run it as their own way to give out money.
Yes.
So they get
Fundraiser.
sponsors.
Oh, okay.
They have the car show, and then they give community, for
Oh,
instance,
yeah,
they
'cause they
donated
pay,
to the
yeah.
Moab Free Health Clinic.
Yes.
And we didn't.
Yeah, yeah. No, I thought it was great.
Yeah, they just gave 10 or 20 grand, I can't remember.
Yeah.
So it's very confusing.
My question was just, how do we get more community events there?
Well, I
then?
think we had plenty in the application process.
Yeah.
But, yeah, the data will be coming out in the fall, late summer, fall.
Right, we did not award the arts,
Festival, we did.
oh, we did?
Mhm.
Okay, thanks.
The-
And the concert series and
Yeah.
and Said Moab.
Right.
So they're all in. You think the timing of the cycle worked well? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what do you think, next year will look like? Because, you know, we started in the fall, you know, because there was all the setting it up, you know, adopting the bylaws and blah, blah, blah. So what do you think the next cycle will look like as
I
far as
think-
timing?
Probably similar, except for the stuff in the fall. I don't think we need to meet until probably right after the first of the year and make any changes and finalize the documents. And then, I mean, we don't necessarily need to have it open for 3 months because I don't know that people spent 3 months writing it, so, but.
Do we want to set a goal to maybe, you know, because here we are, it's almost, well, it is May 1st, you know. So is maybe try to move up the cycle a little bit, so,
We could?
you know, have our decisions made by March 1st? I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there for discussion.
Well, the application deadline is
neutral.
March, wasn't it?
It was March, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we could make it anything,
We could make it, yeah. So
anything we want.
I don't know, I mean, some of the applicants are doing most of their projects during the summer, so I don't know if more time would be helpful or not to them.
Or not,
Hmm.
yeah.
So if they knew earlier that they might be getting,
Correct. That's my thing.
yeah.
Just for their planning
Yeah,
purposes.
That does seem like that could be beneficial, maybe.
I mean, what do you think as far as, like, I assume spring for everyone, including nonprofits in town that are looking for grants, gets crazy in the spring? Like, would it be easier to get that off of your plate and a little earlier in the year? Or do you not quite know what your year looks like yet? It's good to push it back a little bit.
It's a good planning time.
It's a good, like, the winter is good planning time. Me personally, I mean, it didn't take me long to put this application together. So I didn't really see it as like prohibitively, you know, but that's me writing grants a lot, so, might be a more daunting task to others. Yeah, if it moved up or moved back, I wouldn't really care. I think if we moved any direction, I would be wanting to get the deadline sooner. It wouldn't affect, like, YGP as a representative of them, but I could see other projects if they're trying to, like, garner volunteers and set dates for workshops or things like that, that it could be helpful to know earlier. Yeah.
And would we want to consider building in a little bit longer review time for ourselves, including like the opportunity to ask clarifying questions? I don't know how this works or if that's even appropriate. It's like, I guess one point of view would be, you read what's in the application, that's the deal. I think you could get yourself into a lot more work if you were going back and forth. It's kind of like, so I'm talking myself out of this as I'm asking it, actually, so.
Well, I think that we
And I'm
could-
looking at Emily, who's kind of like giving this face like, oh, I don't know what that's going to do.
I mean,
Like a challenge.
also, I mean, this was a public meeting, but we didn't go out of our way to have the applicants here to potentially answer questions, because that could have gotten bigger, but we can definitely make it more of like, please come support your application if we wanted to. So when
Yeah.
you're rating meeting, they're here.
You know, I like the idea of an applicant being able to come in with their application and it gets reviewed. Not to score it like, oh, this is the greatest, but to see, did they answer this? Did they do this? Is the budget the kind of budget that way? You probably already did some of that.
For the people that, yeah, so I was, like you
Right.
said, I didn't go into this is great, but like this is missing or this isn't clear. Yeah, but they're definitely welcome to do that. But as far as like the interaction, if you want to ask for questions in a writing meeting, I've seen that before.
I'm actually withdrawing that suggestion, so
I
as
know
I think
it's,
about it more.
I know it's a lot of work, but the planning board, if you submit a project, you have multiple opportunities to come in and talk to the staff about a project. I'm not saying this is identical, I'm just saying in a small town like Moab, we know lots of the applicants. I think it could help the program if we had the opportunity to sit down and talk with them one-on-one. It's a lot of work. I just think
I
it
feel
could be.
that might be really time-consuming, but I think on the backside, we need to be more definitive of how we're evaluating the appropriation of the funds, because say we like everything, we're still stuck with
Right.
that. If a music festival wants 20,000 and somebody else just wants 2,000, we just need to come up with those breakdown of large requests and benefit where we might be able to fulfill other grants. That's a tough one I don't think we solved.
Agreed.
But except for their grant budget, when it's really clear and really tight, it's hard to say no. Because it shows.
You know what's hard, and you hear it, that organizations will say, oh, rep tax, let's put in 15,000. And they gussy up perhaps what why they need that. It would be so nice, so good if somebody said, we really need $5,000 for this, and there was no, and we could decide, yes, you really need that 5,000.
That would be great.
But again, just a wish.
Yeah, wishful thinking.
Yeah, I think you have to take everybody on their
Yeah.
word that that's what they need for their project. I mean, that's just we can't get into trying to figure that out.
Oh, I understand.
And I actually, when the idea of sort of having the opportunity to ask questions of an applicant, I hear what you're saying about, it allows for a little bit of back and forth and clarity. But as you mentioned, it's a small town. I think it also risks introducing like some bias that's just not there when you have written applications, because then it's, who is the person coming in to talk to you? Are they good at presenting in person? Maybe they're not. Like it just adds this whole other level of not only time, but just
Right.
the potential to just have different influences that are not there if you're just looking at what they wrote. And this is why I'm like withdrawing my original thought. Is like,
Yeah.
part of it is like you have to be able to explain what you're doing on the paper, and it should all be there when you submit it. And if it's not,
And
you open it up to us trying to figure out what you meant. And
I
that's
felt
probably not
Kate
helpful.
took the brunt of that, because I would email her and say,
Right.
where's this person's thing? And she'd be like, oh, let me try to send it again. Or, so how did you feel? Did you feel you were
I think
chasing some of those documents and it
No, I
worked
think
okay?
I thought everyone did a really good job for the first year.
Okay.
And the clearer we can be next year, the better.
But isn't that okay if I emailed you and said, hey, where is this applicant's blah, 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 and then you contact them and say, could you clarify this? And then they send a little bit more.
I think there's a difference between completed applications
Yeah.
and asking for more clarification on something that should probably have been clarified already in the
Okay.
narratives and budget, et cetera. Like, I don't think we necessarily want to, sounds a little harsh, but like help people make their applications better.
I get
Our
it.
job is just to make sure like, oh, I didn't see that. Maybe it just got left off of the email. I
Okay.
think that's fair to ask somebody
Complete,
for.
and it answers what we were looking for.
Yeah, and also, I don't
Yeah.
think you were here yet, but we talked about, because we did have sort of that open house question, Q&A, but it was very early in the cycle, so people hadn't really dove in. If we did that, something that was like a week before the grant was due, we might have a lot of people here with very specific questions.
Yeah.
And I get what you're saying, and
Yeah.
Does the group feel if we move to a area where we're giving Annie the feedback of what to give the feedback on the emails of the groups that asked, that would enlighten some of our problems?
Yeah, and I didn't know, so
areas?
we have a RAP TAC email, and I can change that it goes to everybody. Right now, I've just been sort of forwarding them, and that way, unless I want everyone to respond to them, but then you guys are all seeing the questions.
I'm
Yeah.
curious, what did you think? What did staff think?
I thought it went really smoothly, and like I said, some people weren't excited, the applicants, some of them were bummed that they didn't get the funding they were looking for, but I don't think anyone was concerned with the process. So no, I thought it went very smoothly. And
Good.
everyone stayed to point and was objective in how we scored it. And then as far as grants go, I don't know that it's ever going to be that perfect
Yeah.
evaluation that you're looking
No, I
for.
know. As I said, I wished.
Yeah.
Well, so there's a number of us, and we average them because everyone's got their own slight interpretations about what they value, or, you know,
Right.
we all try to take that out of it, but it's still there.
I would encourage the city's public affairs department to get press releases out with every award, every project that's started, or there's something there that can get a picture taken, so that we can continue to promote this in the town.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I know it did make the paper, but we're looking at maybe getting a logo or something, and we haven't figured that out yet. But it's a great idea.
Definitely in support. And like, every year Wabi Sabi even does like little yard signs or different things for their partners. And I could see, even if it's something simple, the first year, just getting the visibility out there for organizations that, I guess not everyone has a physical location, but.
No, but a lot of them do have like a huge impact, and it'd be
Yeah.
great to have some recognition on there.
I like the idea of an ad that just says, you know, thanks to the community, we were able to, you know, put the dollar amount and then list the organizations that were recipients. Not that number amount, just what organizations in the community received money.
Yeah, good, yeah, spread the word.
As follow-through, I feel like maybe we weren't asked, but the idea is that each project's going to do like their RAP tax and have their logo, and we were gonna work on that, but I was told the city had something.
Yeah, we've talked about it, but we don't have anything definitive.
Okay, because with that award, then when they do anything, they have to include that logo. This was Washington County's, where they're just like, so on their project stuff, they have to say it came from the Recreation Arts and Parks. But, and then I was up in Salt Lake, and they had banners up at like the field botany place, like this event funded by RAP tax, your RAP tax money, and with that same logo. So it's kind of a neat branding.
Good. No, we'll work on that.
Okay,
Good idea.
I think it's required, actually.
I think it is in the
Yeah.
legislation, in
Yeah.
fact, that you have to
So I was just
recognize.
reminding us, I had some,
But I like that, the way they did it.
We can do better than Washington County's logo, though.
I,
We can do better than that.
really? Okay. So do we work on these emails? Like, how do we answer Science Moab when they asked, what could they have done better to get more of their, do we want to address each one that asked?
We can. I can either send me notes. I think my first thought when it came to both Science Moab and, what was the other one? Maybe even like Casey and you had asked, is that I think, from my perspective, is that the committee originally kind of saw them outside of the box of recreation, arts, and parks. And so maybe the original scoring, but then I think it didn't really affect in the end at the funding level. But I think that was sort of some of the reaction I heard was, are they even eligible? It's like, well, yeah, they are.
So how would we answer their specific question of Science Moab of how could we improve to get more of our requests? Wasn't that what they specifically
Yeah, I
asked?
think they wanted, and then also,
Yeah.
the Moab Mountain Bike Association was looking for feedback
Yeah.
as well.
But is that what we're doing?
A better explanation of the need.
Okay.
I think for some of them too, just generally, as I try to think about those specific applications, I think better explanation of the need, and a little more clarity about the location of, because it's got to be in the city, right? And I think for some of them, it was a little unclear. It was like, well, yeah, part of this is, but this is sort of maybe
Yeah, definitely.
bigger than that. I do think I recused myself from the KZMU vote, but I think part of the discussion was like, well, this is like equipment that's not just for the city, and I think even maybe.
I think they could have tied it back to specific recreation and arts programming that and we know they do, but said, here's an example, instead of like, hey, it'll solve everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With the science Moab one, I can't remember now, and I wish I had brought my stuff, but I think one of the programs was like Science on Tap, was it? Or
Yeah, science on the screen.
Science
and
on-
Science
oh.
on tap.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, again, if they maybe had described, because knowing the type of movies that they've shown and talks that they've had, they all do kind of get back to cultural history, and some of that stuff would be fun. But if you just hear science, you're like, how does that apply? So maybe more specifics of what they talk about in their programming.
Sorry, what did we give them versus what they asked for a lot, didn't they?
Who?
Yeah,
I think they got like 2,500, they wanted 10,000.
they got 5,000, they asked for 17,500.
Oh, see, that's not even bad. I would just tell
That's
them,
not bad.
like, there was
not
just
bad.
not enough funding, and you had a
Oh,
good,
you
like,
got
it was a decent application, I thought. We
Right.
can't give them
They
17,000.
Yeah.
They're a new organization.
So I guess my question is, are we relying on Annie on answering that, or are we coming up with the wording? Because for KZMU specifically, I was like, should the RAP tax fund this? They seem well funded in their fundraising. I mean, they do a great job, but is that our goal of evaluating that? And what is the community benefit to that specific grant from KZMU? I couldn't tell. That's just because I'm not modern. Maybe I didn't really understand remote broadcasting, but.
I think we should also ask applicants to expand on partnerships. There was some question, who were they working with, or it seemed to me, reading a few of them, there was this overlap in who was doing what. Like, I think there were a few bicycle repair operations.
Community cycles versus.
Yeah, and I'm
MBA.
okay funding them. Are there opportunities for, maybe they don't know what another group is
Yeah.
actively doing. I don't know. But I just thought maybe more of that.
I believe that a good funding practice is recognizing those things and telling folks like, hey, your application and this one were similar, and I think that you guys should link up and, work together next year.
Do we give them that
And-
feedback? How do we do that?
Yeah, did either of them reach out for, Moab Community Cycles and the Moab Youth Cycling, I think were both similar.
Yeah, we can introduce, I know that the youth cycling is really focused on the high school.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're independent of MBA and community cycles, but community cycles was using MBA as an umbrella.
Okay.
So maybe feedback to both of those would be just more community need demonstrated or benefit to how many people. It just seemed there a very limited reach, just because it's volunteer, nonprofit.
Yeah, I think maybe all applicants could kind of show some of their attendance, for lack of a better word, in the previous years. Because I know, like Moab Youth Cycling, when they open up, it fills up in a day, and they have a wait list, and they can't get to them all. So just sort of that kind of specifics of the need would be
Yeah, and
better
then they had to
than-
get another van, and they needed a lot of funding.
I'm also wondering, so I just want to backtrack a little bit and say that I'm definitely comfortable with you giving the feedback. I don't feel like I want to
Okay.
need to look at it or really verify anything. One thing I do wonder about though is I don't know. I don't want to take up too much of your time.
Oh, no, I think this is an important program, and I would love to
Yeah.
help everyone
Okay.
succeed, so.
And I also am thinking that it might, like, if I were, email's just not always the best place to receive feedback because you can't, like, tone of voice doesn't come through and like whatnot.
Sure, I'd be happy
But,
to make
like,
those phone calls. Probably be
phone-
quicker, actually. to
Phone
make a
calls would be
phone call
quicker,
than
is,
to
yeah,
draft
that's
an
definitely what I'm
email.
trying to say. Quicker and might get the point across
A little more
better.
personal.
Yeah.
You know, there were two, you know, the Moab Mountain Bike Association, which was Anna Sprout, and, you know, they just didn't have their 501c3. And that was, of course, an automatic disqualification.
So she directly emailed, like, why didn't we get this? So I hear you saying just phone calls, but I think an email, then you have proof of how you respond. But, you know, I know.
Right.
It seems
So
actually
what's
faster
some-
than a
yeah.
phone call, because you just be like, da-da-da.
That's, I guess, preference. Yes, I will.
But yeah, I feel like we're dumping on it. I feel like Annie could do it all more efficient and faster without us. And we're just like,
Well, if anyone wanted to make those phone calls, they can definitely do that as well, so it's kind of up to you guys.
yeah.
I mean,
I think we should recognize that it went pretty darn well for
Yeah.
the first time.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, I think we should congratulate ourselves and, you know, enhance what we have. So,
yeah, I hesitate to, I feel like most of the projects the scores were really close.
They were.
There's not that much feedback I think we can give to folks. I mean, the reality is that you're averaging scores between a committee of people. If one person ranks it particularly low because they don't like it for one reason or the other, that's one person, but that drops you 2 points maybe on the average. And like, that could have been enough to just bump you out. I mean, when you look at the ranking, I think it's like the feedback for everyone, it's somewhat generic, right? It's like, you know, focus as much as you can on community need and specifics about what you're trying to do and what the benefit is going to be and who it's going to serve, and it'll probably go better next time. I hesitate to have you call every person, and because I don't think there is meaningful.
We're talking about the specific emails that have been emailed to Annie asking.
I just don't know if there's that specific of feedback that can be really provided to that many of the applicants, because it really was just like,
I agree.
it's an average thing. I don't know if it's even common to provide feedback. Like, it's just kind of the breaks.
Yeah, no one had a project that wasn't worthy, and if we had money, we'd fund them all.
Yeah, we have to rank them, and and that just means that some aren't going to get funded. I mean, that's just the reality too.
Yeah, that's the main feedback, because there just wasn't enough money. Please try it.
Thus-
Please apply again.
Thus, the beginning of the letter, we need more
Yeah.
resources.
Yeah.
I think if applicants should just be thinking to themselves, if someone who doesn't know anything about our program, anything about our organization is going to read this, is it going to be crystal clear to them what the need is, what the benefit is, what this population served is? And is my budget really easy to follow? I mean, that's,
Yeah, and we will change the budget form, for sure.
Sweet.
I was going to say, one of my comments was going to be, I know we need to fix it. I think we should also decide, like, if you don't do the spreadsheet, are we just disqualifying your project? Because I think when there are required things that need to be done and they're not, it's a real easy way to just kick out projects and frankly, like, lower the amount of things we have to review.
Yeah, no, I think that's good, so for next year, we can get clearer and firmer.
A little lenient this year, being the first year.
Then just to clarify, if I was Clay Artisans of Moab and asked, what could I do better next year? The answer would be, you are 100% fundraising. Bam. I mean, I'm just curious if that's, I mean, if ever.
I think there are a couple of projects that felt like, that was one, felt like fundraising, right? You're doing a project you're doing a fundraiser for the organization that is fiscally sponsoring your application for this. We don't think the RAP tax should be used for fundraising purposes. Similarly, it was the Canyonlands Arts Council, I believe, that was using it for essentially organizational promotion, which felt outside of the scope. Because I think when you get one step removed, maybe this is the feedback, when you become one step removed from the community benefit, then it's really hard for us to justify funding the project.
Right, so then maybe we can come up with a statement like that. That's all I was.
I think
looking for.
that's maybe where I land on
think
those.
that's more to reply to those that failed.
I think that's thinking about the youth garden projects application, I feel like we were half a step away from the direct community need. It's like,
And I honestly ranked that project lower because for that reason. I mean, I was trying to be consistent across the
makes
board
sense.
on that.
okay.
Great.
Good, that's great feedback. I think kind of the next step is what if do you want to present to council?
I'm sorry.
What would you like to present to council? Or I think an email format's really great to
Oh,
get the
for a letter?
conversation.
Oh, yeah, well, I wrote kind of an outline here, I guess. This is back to the letter that, yeah, okay.
I'd be glad to work with you on the letter.
Okay,
If you want
great.
just some feedback.
Sure thing. Yeah, no, I'll definitely send it to you all for your
And
like,
then we can
signatures
all
and approvals.
electronically sign it or something.
Yeah.
Or people like me will come into your office and sign the line.
You're more than welcome.
So I'll probably just start out organizing it with, thanking them for the opportunity or whatnot, and letting them know it was an interesting process and expanding on that just a little bit, and then saying, the committee recommends a higher amount of funding, number one, because of the high need that was shared with us this year, anticipating a higher demand next year, and if it's all right with you, Annie, saying that also preliminary data from the park survey showing that people really want to see more events in the parks, and a lot of the partners involved were.
We could, it's not official data yet.
It's not official
but, yeah.
data yet. Okay, I can definitely not include that
But,
too.
yeah.
But, and yeah, I am better at writing than I am speaking, so I promise this letter will come out crisp.
And I would suggest that we, in that letter, point out all the help we had from the staff, from the Moab Art
Yes,
staff.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, yes.
Definitely.
Annie did a superb job.
Well, I think
Staff.
you guys made it easy, so I think I thought it was a huge success.
Yeah, it's exciting. Yeah, and the council meeting the other day was really coming from a really heavy conversation, and then like into that, everyone was like, "Hey."
Oh, that big
That's
water
funny.
discussion?
Yeah.
Yeah, Chuck asked me if we had any openings in parks. I said we do.
And then just to circle back, I feel like in the minutes from the last meeting, at the very end, the review and lessons, that kind of summarizes right back where we are tonight. So pretty concise, very nice. So it's kind of what we have talked about.
Can I make one more comment on the application? Since I came in a little late, I apologize. The one category that I thought was really difficult, and I'm finding myself not a fan of, is the 5-point category. And I apologize if you already talked about this, but I feel like ability to implement the project, history of past city funding, like that's impossible for us to determine, right? I don't really know the qualifications of the project's personnel or the appropriateness of the budget. Like I'm trusting them. I ended up giving 5s for those. Like unless there was something that was just glaringly bad.
Right.
And I don't think there were.
There were glaringly bad ones like community cycles. They can't show any ability to input the project. They didn't even have a rental secured for the shed. So I think there is, and I think that was the committee's problem with the Friends of the Park, Friends of Anonymous Park, is you couldn't see the ability to implement, even. So I think I'm not disagreeing. It is a hard one, but I think you can see history and ability to implement projects, just like with their follow-through, their existence.
What would you change about that?
Could you maybe just take the ability to implement, like or describe your ability to implement this project and add it to
Yeah, because it wasn't a question in the application, I
wasn't.
don't believe, which leaves it to us to figure out. And maybe there's a way to ask that question that's,
And that's
list some
something,
similar
Provide.
projects and budgets that you have successfully completed.
Provide, yeah.
I would scrap the, Mel, I think if we're gonna have the history of past city funding, we need to ask them to provide the history of past city funding, because,
It's good to know.
but that's
yeah,
what-
unless it's, I think it's like, whose burden
Yeah.
is it? Is it gonna be on Annie's and her department to figure out the past funding, or is it on the organization to
Well,
tell us?
that's why I asked, you might have missed it, but I was like, can the application be really clear that they need to answer what
Oh,
we're evaluating?
yeah, I missed that, but I agree.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
if they can just spell that out and have the room to actually answer those specific questions, even if they're creating it, that would help us a lot.
Yeah, I think we shouldn't have anywhere where there's a question in our review criteria that
Yeah.
they don't provide an answer for, or have the opportunity to provide an answer for. Because the more questions we have to ask, the more we're just sort of trying to intuit like what the purpose, goal, history, all of the things. I think we want to remove that as much as possible.
Because I feel you even use that ability into input project about the museum, like looking up Ephraim and like, I can't find evidence of this vinyl project. You know, and it was just put together last minute, not the whole museum staff was involved.
I still gave him a 5 though. I didn't, because I didn't, you know, I didn't
Yeah.
feel like I had any way to be consistent on
With
that
that,
criteria.
okay.
You know, I just felt like,
Yeah.
boy, it just didn't feel like it was well, it wasn't super clear
Yeah.
in the applications, and it's because there wasn't a question for the applicants about that.
I guess my experience was different, and we are different. I found that one of the easier ones to score. And so I'd like to, leave it in there, because it was kind of an equalizer. Like, I might not have scored someone, I might have given them a lower score on, maybe they didn't do the budget or whatever. They didn't have their P&L. And in small organizations, that's probably not too uncommon. So I use that last one kind of as an equalizer,
I think you could get at it in a few different ways. Other grant applications that I've seen, well, number one, the city used to ask, what is your history of past city funding? And you just listed it out. I don't really care as much about that. Neutral about adding that in, just another thing to fill out. But the other grants that I've done, they ask like about the staff and their like skills and ability to like implement the project, which is one way you could interpret that. I could also see it as like a question of, do you anticipate any barriers to the successful completion of this project? And if so, how would you, like, what needs to fall into place, or what do you need to overcome to complete that? Might not be a very popular question, because then people are admitting their, sticking points. So not necessarily advocating for that, but it's one way to think about it. But yeah, I agree. I felt what Neil felt about I didn't really know how to score that one very well. There were a few that I was like, oh yeah, no, but it felt like more like a yes/no question than a scale.
And I think it's interesting that, Barbara, you felt like it was like an equalizer question. I actually felt like it was a question that favored the higher funded, more established nonprofits, and I don't want this to be something that precludes new creative organizations and ideas. And I actually felt the other way around. That's why I was more inclined to score it generously, because it was, it's just interesting how we viewed it in different ways, and both are valid for sure.
Yeah, I feel like if we include in the application, that applicant has to answer those. Specifically, then they would be like, oh yeah, how am I gonna get volunteers? Oh yeah, how am I implementing this project? And it would be okay if they said that was gonna be one of their struggles or barriers, but they were gonna work on it, rather than be naive or not know about it. So, I don't know, I'm kind of with Barbara on it.
You know, it'd be interesting to know why some of the folks who didn't apply, after they saw it, why didn't they?
Do you know of anyone who didn't apply?
I do, the taiko drumming didn't apply. They felt they had a capital project, but I'm so confused because the very first statement on the guidelines says capital projects
Well, they had
are
reached
okay.
out to me that in our village, but they were looking at doing remodeling and electrical work.
Yeah.
And that was sort of yeah, it was a little bit too very specifically capital.
Yeah, I'm just
But-
curious if
But
there.
it does say
yeah.
capital projects are allowed.
Yeah.
Potentially, yeah.
But when we talked about capital projects, we talked about them having to be publicly available. And maybe it's the same question, like one step removed is just maybe too far on a capital project. Like we talked about playgrounds, right? A playground at our village or something like that.
Yeah.
That would be publicly available during when school wasn't in session or something. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. I can see where like electrical work on your existing structure might not get you there.
Yeah.
I think this isn't it just isn't the right fit for this particular grant process, even if it does technically qualify.
Yeah,
You know,
'cause
and
I know
that's
that
up to the grantee to
We had
decide.
emphasis on like projects or programs,
Yeah.
which may have a capital element to them, but
Yeah.
electrical work just seemed, like you said, one step removed.
But I think it's worth hearing in your conversations with other groups that you may be friendly with, just to hear, hey, you didn't apply? Oh, we just didn't want to. Or, well, it just seemed we had to get a lot of stuff together. Or we didn't think we'd get it after we looked at it. I don't know.
Yeah, so I haven't
Again, I'm
heard
just
from
wondering.
anyone other than a few people that were clearly outside the city limits, that didn't apply. And that's really just, yeah, that's just kind of written in the legislation.
I'm
Yeah.
just wondering.
But yeah,
All right,
I'd
I
be
didn't
curious
hear
to know.
from anyone else. And that's just generally like, I don't know, anytime you're applying for a grant, you know, we see grants come through all the time that, yeah, we technically qualify, but like, you have to weigh your odds and if it's worth the time to apply.
And
That's-
we got more grant applications than we had money for, so
Yeah,
I'd say it was
exactly.
pretty successful,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
If we were looking at
Yeah,
at a surplus
yeah.
of funds because we only had 3 people apply, we would be having a
Yeah,
different
yeah.
conversation right now.
I know, I was concerned for a while because we were getting so few.
Oh,
Yeah, and then all
It's
of
like
a
job
sudden.
applications, wait till
Boy,
the
they
last
just
day.
really procrastinate, oh yeah.
Does anyone have any regrets on any or want to share a frustration with any of them? Or are we all happy?
With
I just didn't
Any
know if anyone
applications?
wanted to share, just to clear the year, share a frustration with any of them, or as a way to look at next year's problem solving.
Yeah, I mean, beyond the budget thing, I think it would be nice if the recent financial statements were a bit more like, they were just all over the place. And to me, financial statement is a broad term. Do they want like this year's budget? Probably not, maybe. You're already doing the project budget, so I think not. Or do you want like a balance sheet?
Right.
Some-
Yeah, I would like to see
Yeah.
that change in the
Yeah.
application where they're
P&L.
just simply showing, some of them included these umbrella organizations. You're like,
Yeah.
no.
Well, what would help you guys to evaluate them in that regards?
The budget they're working with for that year of their grant, correct?
Maybe. I'm definitely open to that. I think if I see the project budget, I'm okay with just seeing that, personally, but open to other ideas. What I think I'm looking for is like, how is the organization in terms of like assets?
Yeah.
And are they like, it's so hard because they're asking for grants because they need money, but like,
Yeah.
are they, that's what I assume when people say financial statement, but then looking at what people sent in, I was like, I don't really know if that
So
was
let's
clear.
clarify
Yeah,
that on
I'd
the
say,
application
yeah,
of
balance
just-
sheet and profit and current, most recent balance sheet and profit and loss.
Okay.
Some people just included their checking balance.
Yeah.
which is not the same thing.
No, but it was okay. It was like, oh,
Because, I mean, they
Well-
might have accounts at different banks and all that stuff.
And the smaller the organization, I mean, I realize, I mean, all the big guys, man, you've got your balance sheet, you've got your P&L, they're using QuickBooks. I mean, I'm happy as a clam, you know, every time I see that. But the smaller guys, it's an unreasonable expectation for the smaller guys but do your best, right?
And so that's where I think just clarifying, like,
Right, clarify
these are the
the
kinds of
budget.
things that you can send in that will work for this.
yeah.
So that, I don't know. How do people feel about that? Also, like, is this
Sounds
information
good.
that we want? Do we want this? Okay,
Well, I'm gonna say yes.
okay.
Because, yeah, I think if they have it, please provide it, and then we'll have to figure out the smaller ones, you know, that where it is an unreasonable expectation that we, you know, try to help them out in some other way.
I personally felt that within the applications, if they could clearly show their breakdown of where the grant money was going, was excellent. And some really
Yes.
did that. It was
Yeah.
very confusing on our application of what they were thinking and what they could get. And then another side of that would be, I don't personally need to know the big picture of their financial statement, just that year with that, why they have that need. Or, so, for instance, what other fundraising are they, I thought that was gonna be in the application, what other fundraising have you obtained? Not many of the applicants gave that, some did. So for instance, Science Moab did, it demonstrated all their fundraising, who gave them money, it was, you know, it's massive there.
It could be, they could have asked for a lot of money because sometimes it's hard to break that up.
Yeah,
Like, I'm just again, speaking from experience, like at the youth garden, you know, we'll have a grant that covers all youth programs, and then we'll have a grant that covers just spring youth programs, and then we'll have one that's just summer camp. And so like trying to figure out the percentage of like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, this particular program was funded, this percentage of this grant, so like, I'm also looking at a grant application going, what's gonna be the easiest thing for me
Yeah.
to like put down and clarify, because it's not always like, oh yeah, just straight on, I've fundraised this much for this program already.
yeah,
But that, again, that's just us.
right.
And I guess
Well,
what I'm trying
for
to say about the
instance,
Science Moab
yeah.
thing is they might have asked for a big thing.
Right.
Because they are fundraising
Right.
and getting more like general operating or
Yeah.
whatever it is to cover
But for
that.
instance, if the museum had said, we've applied for this grant, and this grant, this grant, it looks to me like, oh, they are really trying. But instead, if it's a last minute thing and they've applied nowhere else, I just think it's sort of an example of quality of budget, of application.
Isn't what we really want to know is that they're solvent enough to have the matching funds that they are saying that they're
Okay.
going to provide? I mean, I just don't know what else I need to know about their fundraising, other sources of income. For me, it's not going to change how I look at the application. As long as they have the money to match in the way that they're asking for the grant, then I'm fine if they can show that.
So I don't know if it's a requirement from the city. I'm okay just not asking for any of it. I feel like you are saying that you would like to see that.
Very much so.
Um,
And I think we would be remiss not to ask.
In some organizations, so I'll again use the youth garden as an example. You know, we have 6 months of operating expenses and savings for emergencies. But on our balance sheet, if I submit that with something like this, they might go, oh, they have
You have so much money.
so much money.
Well, and I did see that on a couple of them, you know, it was a pause, you know.
Yeah, like, oh, do
yeah.
they really need this?
But I still think it's a pretty normal part of an application process is to provide financials. When you when you apply for grants, don't you have to provide that information?
Most ask for either a profit and loss or balance sheet, or just this year's budget. They don't even know, not necessarily how much money do you have, but like how much do you expend to. What's
Well,
your approved
I'd like
budget
to,
for the
one
year?
more year anyway, let's
Okay.
keep it.
Okay,
Yeah,
sure.
let's keep
Well,
it one more year.
To summarize, I think we're
And
asking.
then I'll be off, so. You can do
Let me apply.
Well, oh, go ahead, you had.
Oh, I just was gonna summarize, I think we're really just asking that the application ask each applicant to qualify within our evaluation categories and to make sure they're stating within the budget question. Because, yeah,
Yep.
to clear, yeah. So it's simple. Okay.
No, I was just gonna say, when the money is awarded and the projects theoretically begin, they'll be coming to you, right, to get paid, and they'll tell you what they did.
Yeah, so like in the email I sent you, with some of the dollar amounts being so low, it was easier that we're just gonna give them a checkup.
Right, right.
And then kind of like, and Kelly, you can let us know if it's hard to get people to report for community contributions or not. Because that's how community contribution works, is we give it to them up front, and then they have a year to report.
Yeah, so we had some groups actually sent in like progress reports that wasn't required, but some groups like to do that. And then at the end, they had to submit a project narrative and budget as their final.
So again, you're our eyes and ears as these projects start to develop. So if there are issues with completion, or, geez, are they doing what they said? That's a chance for us to say, whoa, we're not giving you that money, right? Is that it? Oh,
Well, I think it'd be, I mean, I trust that everyone here will do the project, but they can't reapply for any further funding if they don't complete their project. So that's kind of the hook.
okay. Yeah. I was on a different tax.
Yeah, just to clarify, on that, the budget form, is that going to stay in there? as-
We'll change it. People did not
Oh, we didn't like it, or
the applicants
the
didn't,
applicants?
yeah. And I actually stole that from the Utah Outdoor Recreation grants. But,
I kind of liked it. I mean, of course, I didn't have to fill one out.
I didn't like the question about UORG grant, like, have you applied for a UORG
I know, I forgot to
grant?
delete
There
that.
was
That
a
was
lot-
that was a
there lot of
copy and
weird
paste
little
error.
quirky things.
I got a lot of questions.
So,
Oh, look, they have applied.
You would change it or reformat it?
I would
or-
reformat it to
Okay.
something potentially simpler.
Okay, but I did, I would just like to see all the applicants do that. Yeah,
Yeah, I think next year we can be a little bit more concrete on that.
yeah, because that one was very helpful too, you know, in evaluating.
There was also the issue of people making their text really tiny.
I think it was a default in that box. I think that might have, I don't know how, but I think it might have been the default in the one box in particular. Because I had to like look to read it.
Maybe they can just make each a document, like instead of trying to fit it in on the application.
I think it was in the PDF, I don't know the format.
Maybe
Something
all
that-
applications should be electronic.
They all were.
Or
Except
like
for
not,
one,
like not a PDF, like a
Or,
like a word.
form,
yeah,
Google form.
I mean, the planning department requires all site plans are on a thumb drive. You know, we can require stuff like that.
Yeah. I think I'll take responsibility for the form getting jumbled.
Well, I think some of this too, Amy, might be, that we ask them things that will make your job easier.
Yeah.
You know, so, if you have any suggestions in that regard.
Yeah.
I think it, like I said, I think this went really smoothly. All in all, it was, I think everyone here, especially, I mean, you guys really took your time and were very thorough and I think very, and reading the applications, very thoughtful too.
Really good process.
All right, well.
All right.
When's our next meeting?
I know, January?
Sounds good.
Unless we feel the need to meet, we can just hit the ground running in January.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
So happy New Year. The year is going that fast though.
And then
really.
But you know what? Hopefully there'll be like some updates.
Yeah,
Like
we'll
every now and
definitely
then,
give you
send us a
updates.
quarterly.
When we get a cute little logo going.
Yeah.
Look for it.
Yeah.
So excited.
So I know this is really jumping ahead, so the agenda for that meeting would be, what?
I think we would do another review of the application and criteria, and then any kind of updates from the year, and then set your dates and go forth.
Okay.
Yeah, what was the application deadline this year?
Was it March 31st?
Yeah.
March 1st?
March
March 1st, yep,
Was it March 1st?
March 1st.
Okay.
But I do think having a meeting or an open house very close to the deadline would be
Yeah,
really effective.
Yeah.
I think that's
So we
the
should do
most
this
best.
early January versus later January?
Yeah, and then start advertising it after that meeting, probably.
Well, there's one more thing y'all have to do, which is this letter, which I'll draft up and I'll send to you all, or I don't know what's allowed.
Yeah, well, technically, if you start, I mean, this isn't, we're not, it may be more, it'd be best to do like one-way communication and then collect all the comments and get them to you, but this isn't like we're not doing, not rating of grants.
We also don't want to group edit this thing, because
Oh,
then someone
this
will
is
start
very
doing it, and then they'll send you one, and then someone else will send you their edits on the other one.
So yeah, I would send out to the group, and if you have any feedback, either goes straight back to Emily or myself. And like maybe stay out of the wordsmithing, and keep it to,
I will do it in
Yeah.
Google Docs and make it so that you can only suggest things. You can only comment, you can't actually.
Yep, smart.
Because I just know how it goes.
all right, well, thank you again, it was
All right.
very successful.
Yeah.
Need a
Thanks, everyone.
motion, or did we do that already?
I would love a motion to
So moved.
adjourn.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.